Welcome to Healing Your Family Legacy, here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Innovative, evidence-based recovery that helps to identify intergenerational trauma, allowing for freedom and embracement of the healing process. Today, episode 83, Relationships and Recovery, Part 2. And now your host, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee.
This is Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, helping you heal your family legacy. Last time we talked about, relationships. That's a big one. And I asked you to think about, are you able to have your boundaries with your spouse or your partner? And for that matter, kids, parents, whatever, right? But we're talking about primary relationships now. And it was a response to a request from an individual who asked me to address this issue. And it's a big one. So I want you to think about that. Think about what is a boundary to you, because this is one of the main issues around recovery from any addiction when you are trying to have any kind of relationship. And that is, my boundaries keep myself contained. Okay? That's what a boundary is. I am self-contained. I'm self-contained in where my body is standing. I'm self-contained around what I feel. I'm self-contained around what I think, what my beliefs are. That's self-containment. And as soon as I walk over trying to convince you, make you understand, give you more information when you haven't asked for it, when I'm in your physical space, I am no longer self-contained. Now, I'm out of my boundary system. I've heard people talk about this in terms of staying in your hula hoop. Okay, you know what a hula hoop is? One of those round things. I used to be good at it when I was young, when they first came out. And now I can barely keep one up, but whatever, I could exercise, I guess I could try. But a hula hoop, if you just put a hula hoop around you, you say, okay, as soon as I step out of this, in order to get to you, in order to talk to you, in order whatever, I'm out of it. But, that's a simplistic kind of way of looking at it, because boundaries really are bigger than that. I was talking in a meeting the other day about spiritual boundaries. Like, as soon as I'm thinking about what God's doing or what God's plan is or what God's doing right now or what, it's like I am so out of my own boundary system. Now I've leaped over into God's boundaries. How's that? How's that for a boundary breakdown? Okay. So I have to keep myself contained, because as soon as I'm out of my own boundaries, now I'm over into someone else's reality. I'm not taking care of my own business. And that's all really that I can do, is take care of my own business. So in relationship, I was talking about the couple that had the 6-year-old that wasn't grasping math issues or math concepts readily. How one person thought we need to go get professional help. We need to get a tutor. We need to do all this. And the other person saying, in their own reality, thinking, this child is 6. They're in the first grade. Great. They're just starting to talk about the concepts of math. Can we give it a little time? Right? Now, when you're listening to me talk about this, you might think, yeah, but if the kid doesn't get the basic concepts of math, they're going to have problems in the future. That might be your position. Or your position might be, let's give it a little time. Let's talk to the teacher. And there's no right answer to that. Okay? People who have successful relationships, meaning that their relationships last, they go the distance, like they compromise. Every time they go into a situation where they know that their spouse or their partner is going to have a different opinion, or they don't know, but they find out quick enough that there's a different opinion. Instead of thinking, oh, mine's right, they think, okay, well, I can see that we're going to have compromise here. Successful relationships require compromise. And they require commitment. When you decide that, okay, I'm going to be in this relationship, the commitment is not to forever and ever. It means that daily I'm going to commit myself to making sure that I do my part in this relationship. And that I'm not going to go outside the relationship to find someone else to talk to, unless it's a professional. And I'm going to communicate my needs and my wants. I'm going to communicate what my thoughts are and what my feelings are. And it's not difficult. It's pretty simple. It's not easy, but it is simple. I'm telling you what I think. I think that, my 6-year-old needs to have a little time. I think that it might be about maturation, and they'll mature because they're learning something new every 15 seconds. I think that we need to give it a little time. That's my thought. And my feelings about it are, I'm not worried. I feel pretty calm about it. I'm not worried. I'm not concerned. I think that it's normal. I don't have to have the same thoughts. I don't have to have the same feelings as you. I don't even need to say that, because as soon as I do, I'm using that you word, you, I'm immediately out of my boundary system as soon as I do that. Now I'm over in your reality. Okay? And I need to be able to cooperate with you on this. That means that we are going to have a compromise. It means that I don't have to have my way. But a compromise means that we both get something. So it might come down to, okay, we'll give it a few months and revisit it. But in the meantime, I'm going to start doing some exploration and find out who might be a good tutor in the event we get one. Okay. You see, both people are getting something out of that. That's a compromise. And then one of the things that you can only do if you can do it for yourself, and that is to have compassion. Until you have compassion for yourself, that compassion thing isn't going to happen for anyone else. Okay, and compassion doesn't mean that I'm feeling sorry for you. It means that I have a sense of what you're going through, and I want to support you in that, but I don't need to do that and take away from what I'm going through at the same time. Okay, so I can have compassion for the pain and suffering that you're experiencing, but I don't need to jump out of my boundary system and have it with you. I can appreciate it. I can try to understand what it must be like. I can, and this is one of the things that might be kind of hard for people. Unless you've been in the space, I can give you the space to have whatever feelings and experiences you're having right now. And that means there might be quiet. When I've worked with people who have been suffering from a horrible loss, any loss can be horrible, but from the loss of somebody that they really loved and cared about, and they're in there talking to me in my office about it, sometimes the best thing to do is just be quiet and listen. That's giving space to somebody that's part of a compassionate experience. I don't need to fix you. I don't need to come over there and pat you on the back or, I mean, periodically I would pull out a Kleenex and hand it to them. But I don't even give them the box. Because if I'm going to be there, I'm not going to, have you ever been in a situation where you're in a lot of pain? You've lost somebody, or you've lost this, relationship or something, and you're just feeling so sad, and maybe you're even crying. Somebody pats you on the back, you stop feeling it, don't you? That's an indication to stop. Not on purpose, but that's the impact. Giving space. And this is important for your relationship. I'm going to give you space to have whatever feelings that you're having about whatever it is. I mean, in little things and in big things. Say I told you I'd be home at 3, and I don't get there till 3:30, and I didn't call you because I was on the road, and I don't use my cell phone on the road. So I just had to, just try and manage my way to get home as soon as I could. And when I walk in, you're angry, you're hurt. Maybe we missed something that you really wanted to participate in or be at because of my lateness. If I just sit there and listen and not make excuses, it's like, unless you ask me what happened, I'm not going to make excuses. If you ask me, that's another story. Okay? But most of the time, if I just sit there and listen to you, have your experience, by the time you're done talking, you feel better. And I can just say, I'm sorry, I'm going to try harder next time to leave earlier. Even in the situation I talked about with the child, with the, who was having trouble, the 6-year-old is having trouble with the math concepts, not grasping them soon enough. I said, you might be really upset about that. I'm not. Let's say I'm the one that's over there going, well, a kid's 6 years old. And that would probably be me in reality. But let's say my spouse is very upset and really is struggling with this. I'll listen. Well, I'm worried that they'll never get those concepts. And then they, when they're in high school, they won't be able to take math and they won't be able to take calculus. And then when they try and get in college and blah, blah, blah. And if I just sit there and listen without trying to change your mind, because guess what? Your opinion is valuable to me. And if I'm able to realize that your opinion is valuable to me, it isn't my job to change it. It isn't my job to try and change your opinion, change your feelings, change you in any way. Then we probably aren't going to have a big conflict that will devolve, and we end up in the therapy office 6 months later going, we don't know what it is we're fighting about. We have communication problems. Now, I will venture to say that if you have boundaries, if both of you have your own boundaries, it's just not going to go down that rabbit hole. And when I've convinced people to have boundaries with each other and that it isn't required that you all have the same opinion about anything, I have people say to me, well, they should have been bigger. We should have been able, don't they have to agree with me on this in order to get past it? No, they don't. I mean, even in a situation where, the couple's in my office because one of them has had an affair. and the other one's found out about it. Like they come in and I say, okay, tell me what's going on. And, it's usually the person that has had the affair that says, well, I had an affair and, I don't know how to make this right. And I say, there really isn't any way to make this right except to not have any more affairs. But you've got to be able to listen to the impact that it's had on your partner. And if that means that you're going to sit there for 6 months every week and listen to the impact, then that's what you're going to do. And try and understand how, have some compassion to what that person's going through. That's what a boundary is. Because at some point, he or she will be through that trauma of that immediate acute pain and might even trust you that now that you haven't tried to explain, get defensive, rationalize, justify. You're just listening and periodically saying, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that anymore. That at some point, that might start a healing process. Now, let's say you're in recovery, you have boundaries, but your spouse does not. And that's really a hard one. But what you do, as soon as you think, okay, my spouse isn't in recovery, if that's a true statement, and, you probably know, then you get your eyes off your spouse. Stop thinking about what they're doing or not doing in their, quote, recovery. Because if they're not in recovery for their childhood trauma, then that doesn't change the fact that you need to stay focused on you. That means that whenever issues come up, and they don't need to be big ones, just little ones. It's like when you ask, oh, what should we have for dinner tonight? And then when they say, I don't know, you've got to stop yourself from saying, well, you know what? If you're going to be in recovery, you've got to stop saying, I don't know. You've got to make a decision. You just think to yourself, well, okay, I guess I'll just have to make that decision. Or I can come up with a few things, throw a few things. Well, do you want to have fish? Well, do you want to have chicken? Well, do you want to have a salad? Yes, no. Okay, fine. I've still, it might feel like if you're the one in recovery that you're doing most of the work in the relationship. And I would venture to say that to keep the relationship going and keep it healthy, you probably are going to be more responsible to do that in the relationship, but that you'd be doing it anyway. Okay? If you're gonna start keeping score, it's not gonna work out anyway. But it might require you to do more work because maybe sometimes you'd just like to say, why don't you say what you want once in a while? Okay? Like if they're not in recovery for their childhood trauma, they don't know their reality and that's one of their issues. They're not going to be able to do it. They might try, but you're just going to have to say, okay, well, how about this or how about that? And remember, recovery from codependence and childhood trauma means that you are now more mature. And when children are, when they are too afraid to say what they think or want, parents start, or they're too young to know what they think or want, and say, oh, would you like lunch? Okay. What do you want? I don't know, because they're too young. So what do parents do? They start like, well, would you like a peanut butter sandwich or would you like, a bowl of soup? You have to give options. Because if your partner is not in recovery for their childhood trauma, they might not be able to be in that emotionally adult reality as often as you. Okay. That's okay. If you love them, if you agree to, have you made a commitment? If you have a lot of other areas that you come together on and you can, communicate and cooperate and, there's nobody getting hurt, then you might say, okay, well, I guess I'll just take that responsibility. I'll be responsible for that. You have to remember that, sometimes when people are in recovery for their codependence, for their childhood trauma, you might think that, well, now I can help other people. Well, that's true if you go to a 12-step meeting or if they ask you to. But, you don't get in a relationship to say, okay, well, here I've fallen in love with you. I want to be with you. Now change. That's not good. It won't last. It will disintegrate. Because, most of us will change. We all change. It happens as we grow older and get more mature. And, even as you get older, you notice different changes that happen in your body and happen in your mind, and that you notice the things that upset you before don't upset you anymore. These things will happen. Changes will occur. And if you are in recovery for your codependence, then you know that it's not your business to make people change the way you want them to. People will change around you just by you paying attention to you and having your boundaries and being self-contained. Those changes will happen because they'll find out that, well, this old way isn't working, so I got to find a new way. And if you were always the one who would jump over there and try and get them see or get them to understand and get them to, go along with whatever it is, if you were that one before you got in recovery for your codependence, then you're not doing that anymore. And that can have an impact on your partner who's used to that. So if they're saying something and they're expecting you to leap over there and start trying to, control what they're doing, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and you're not doing that anymore, they change. Now, how will they change? I don't know, but I would tell you that it will change the dynamics in the relationship. And sometimes, it really improves the relationship. It enhances the relationship. That's what I've noticed. I've noticed that in relationships, even with your own family of origin, that if you get in recovery for your childhood trauma, and remember, if there was trauma against you, there was trauma in the family and everybody was affected. So if you are just doing your job, staying in your boundary system, not jumping over there trying to make them be someone else, think something else, and only giving them suggestions, say, when they ask, the relationship with them start to change. And it usually changes for the better. At least with you and that person. It might not change all of their relationships because they have their own dynamics, but it will change the dynamics of your relationship with your family of origin members individually. Sometimes as a group, but most of the time it's individual. That means you do a lot of things like, say you're talking to one family member and they start talking about the other family members in a negative way, and you say, if you have issues with them, I'd really support you in talking to them. But it's just not my business what's going on with them. Unless I want it to be. That kind of stops that dynamic. And you can say that to your spouse if they start talking about, what they think you ought to be doing, and you just say, what you're thinking about me isn't my business right now. I'm doing the best I can. I have my own reality. I have my own thoughts about that. Or here's my feelings about that. When you're in a primary relationship, You need to be open enough to let people know what's going on, even if you don't agree with what they're saying. So like, going back to the 6-year-old. I'm really upset. I just think we need to get some immediate attention onto this. And you might be thinking, well, I think you're overreacting. Not the thing to say, because now you're talking about you, someone else. But it is a thing to say where I don't agree with that assessment. Here's what I think. You see, when you say it that way, the person could still have their opinion and may not agree with you. And they might come back at you and say, well, you aren't paying attention, or you don't know what you're talking about, or it's like, and you don't, as soon as you say, that's not true, I do know what I'm talking about, now you're what I call in the pig pen. It is no longer about the difference we have here. It's like, when I have boundaries in a relationship, it's okay for me to say, well, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that assessment. Here's what I think. Like my spouse and I, we had some interesting conversations about where we should live when we retired. Because what I wanted to do was just move out in the middle of nowhere, build a little house, live off the land. I know how to do that, and always wanted to do that, so that's what I wanted to do. My spouse is a city person. We'd been living in cities because, well, my work required me to be available. And so we ended up living in a medium-sized, like 80,000 people. We live in a house where I can see long distances. So, we're able to compromise. But it wasn't because she was wrong and I was right, or I was wrong and she was right. It's like we were able to talk about, and it was a hard decision because this is the rest of our lives. But, when you have a commitment in a relationship, you don't ever throw the relationship into the arena. Well, I just can't live with like that. It's like, you never say that. You never say, I'm going to leave or I'm going to get a divorce. You do that, you're starting to chomp away at the relationship anyway. And she understood where I was coming from, and I understood where she was coming from because we had conversations about it. And we're able to reach a compromise. It doesn't mean that, it was the most thrilling thing for either of us. But we made it work, and we have a good life where we live. And I can go out into, mountains or desert and be by myself whenever I want. So I got kind of what I wanted. She got kind of what she wanted, and we're all good with it. But we had to know, we had to keep our boundaries intact to even have the conversation. So I hope this has been helpful for you. And just like this person, when they emailed me and wanted me to address these issues, I hope that they got addressed. And let me remind you that any of you can contact me and ask me to address any topic that would be useful at healingyourfamilylegacy@gmail.com. You can also go on my website, donnabevan.com, and there's a link that you can get to my email there. So until next time, take care and keep your boundaries.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Healing Your Family Legacy here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. This channel is made possible because of listeners just like you. If you would like to support the channel with your tax-deductible contribution on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. Healing Your Family Legacy is copyright 2022, Dr. Donna Bevan-Lee, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.
Hey friends, Sean here, your Experience of the Soul producer. I want to take a moment to tell you about something truly exciting. The SoulWorks online community, created by your host, Cynthia Alice Anderson, and available on the Mighty Networks app. If you're looking for a place where you can explore your spiritual path, connect with others, and grow in a meaningful way, then this is for you. SoulWorks is so much more than an online community. It's a safe, inclusive space for spiritual exploration, self-discovery, and personal transformation. Inside the community, you'll find everything from uplifting spiritual studies to soul-centered growth practices, meditations, affirmations, and so much more. It's a space where you'll always be supported and never judged. The best part, membership is free. You'll have access to powerful resources, inspiring content, and a supportive group of like-minded people who are all on their own unique spiritual journeys. And if you're ready to dive deeper, there are premium options available to enhance your experience with a live Monday night talk series and extended, deeper meditations. If you're seeking a place to connect, grow, and nurture your soul, we would love to have you join us in the SoulWorks community and see where this journey can take you. Visit my.soulworkscommunity.com today.